My guest today on Drifting is Colonel Grahame Jones. Grahame is the top law enforcement officer for Texas Parks and Wildlife. He's a true conservationist and a true leader. We're fortunate to have him serving our natural resources here in the state of Texas. Enjoy our conversation. Good morning, man.
Hey, good morning.
What are you guys doing? You all by yourselves there?
Yeah, well, we have a daughter here, and our other daughter's in Colorado. But yeah, everyone's zooming around and just kind of hunkering down, man.
Gabby's in college, and
yeah, Gabby's in college.
She's here at the house.
Yeah, Jaylee's here at the house. Yeah.
Julie, your wife, coached you onto this deal.
Yeah, Julie's back there somewhere. I think she's probably about to get on with her. She's a preschool teacher, so she's been getting on with them a couple of
some teleconferencing school.
Yeah.
What's the dog's name back there?
That is PETA. That's PETA, named after the character in the Hunger Games.
Oh, right on. Cool, man. How are y'all getting through this deal so far? Everybody all right?
Yeah. I appreciate you asking. We're doing good. What about you and the family? How's everybody?
Same.
Yeah.
Couple moments here and there, a little tension, frustration, all normal. Work through it, and
exactly
appreciate just how fortunate we are.
That's it. How are you at home? Are you on the coast, or where are you?
I'm at home in Austin right now.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. I'm at my family's home, not my home currently. Nice. Looking forward to getting back down on the water.
Yeah, you bet.
Is headquarters still functioning as usual?
Yeah, not as usual. We're our game wardens are out, primarily moving a lot of personal protection equipment around the state, a lot of masks, gloves, medical supplies. So they're really focusing on that right now. Obviously, they're there if something were to, as far as their primary mission to, protect the natural resources of Texas, they're obviously still doing that. In fact, they pulled this earlier in the week. They pulled about 2 miles of long line out in the Gulf. They're just outside Boca Chica. So that's still going on. That doesn't stop, unfortunately. Yeah.
No, I mean, they'd rather be doing nothing else, I imagine, as well.
That's exactly right. But it's just one of those things, it's like with Hurricane Harvey. We're going to step up and sort of triage and figure out what needs to be done and be a proud member of the state's response. So our game wardens are ready and willing to help out wherever they can.
So for folks that don't know, you're the colonel, which makes you the top law enforcement officer and in charge of law enforcement division for Texas Parks and Wildlife.
That's correct. Yes, it's my honor to be in that position, and it's been an absolute dream. My whole career as a game warden has really been a dream come true for me.
I think, what were you born in, 1970?
1969.
1969, yeah. Same year as me, so you're 50 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
And gosh, just to let on to the public a little secret, we're going to be really sad to lose you, but you're going to be retiring here soon, no?
I am. Yeah, I'm retiring officially at the end of this month.
God, so soon.
Yeah, so soon. But I'm still going to be very actively involved. Proudly involved in conservation issues, across the state, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart. Nothing's going to change there. I'm taking on a role as the executive director of the 100 Club of Central Texas, and they really serve the families of first responders when in tragedy strikes. So I'm looking forward to that role and helping out on something that's very, very important to me. And then we'll kind of see where the next chapter goes, but I'm ready for that challenge for sure.
Gosh, man. So, okay, for all you young folks that might tune into these are what smart life decisions look like on the other side of the screen here. This man is 50 years old, about to retire, likely to have pension and health care for the rest of his life. He served his state and fellow Texans to the best of his professional ability. And me, on the other hand, I'm going to be pushing a boat till I'm, can't move anymore, barely making a dollar. So
I'm ready. Hey, let me tell you something. I'm ready to trade right now.
What you chose to do, not what I chose to do.
No,
man. We just got you as colonel. It seems like, what was that, 2017?
Yeah, it was Harvey right when Harvey, was coming on shore,
August 25th, 2017.
yeah, it was. And I know that had a huge impact on you and what you do and what you care about. And it had a huge impact on all of the state and obviously Louisiana as well. But yeah, I mean, that's something that, again, that was sort of a baptism by fire. Uh, People ask me all the time, what is one of your proudest moments in this role as colonel? And I have to say, I respond, first of all, just again, the day-to-day operations of what our game wardens do, where their heart is in protecting our natural resources and everything that encompasses. But that Harvey response, what they did, the rescues and evacuations of 12,000 Texans, that was a big deal. We're talking about hundreds of lives. And so really that was absolutely amazing to witness. I didn't have anything to do with that. I was, in a cubicle. But the guys out there in the field taking care of business, helping their communities that really they were a part of in a lot of those communities. That's just what was amazing to watch that.
Yeah, no doubt. It's like we're both Houston kids, right? Growing up, I mean, I didn't disrespect the law, but I naturally got into a little bit of trouble here and there. And I figured the greater distance between me and a law enforcement official, the better. And it wasn't, and then my only other real experience was making sure that the bubblegum lights didn't come on behind me on the highway as a driver. But I didn't really have a strong connection. No one in my family served as a law enforcement officer, until we really became friends and I got really deep in with the daily activity of game wardens and what they mean to our natural resources. And then having the privilege and honor of being part of the Citizens Game Warden Academy, and then being an ambassador for Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation, and now serving on the Saltwater Advisory Committee for Texas Parks and Wildlife. I'm absolutely just so reverent of all law enforcement officers, but especially as it applies and pertains to my life. The protection of our natural resources and wild animals who have no defense on their own, against the challenges they face, except for being protected by the amazing, and I'm not just blowing smoke. Every game warden I've met and their passion to serve and protect our natural resources is just, it's a phenomenal group of individuals that you have the privilege to lead. And hats off to all you guys and the risks you take and what you do for us.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but the feeling is absolutely mutual. Game wardens can't do our job without people like you. You're the eyes and ears of what's going on out there. You have really your finger on the pulse of what's going on that piece of the Texas coast that you know so well. And your willingness, we fished together a few times, and I've sent friends and referred friends to you as well. And I know how busy you are. And for you to take the time to serve on those advisory boards and to be this is something that I think, whenever we're talking about what are the big conservation issues, what's pending, what's on your mind, what's on my mind, so much change that's occurred since we were born in 1969 and what's coming down the pike. Really it's that mindset, to me, is one of the biggest issues, is helping people find that connection with the outdoors. And that's what you do for people. So hats off to you and for everything that you do for us as well. I mean, the way that you view the environment, the way that you protect the environment is absolutely amazing. So I just can't say enough about that, JT.
Thank you, Graham. It means a lot coming from you. So going back to how did a Houston boy ended up being the colonel for Texas Parks and Wildlife? What after high school? You went to FBI Academy, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Grew up there in Houston, and of course, probably like you, ran outside to the after a rain to the bar ditch with a little string and some bacon and tried to catch those crawfish and frogs and all that kind of cool stuff that was in those open spaces that were a little bit more prevalent then than they are now. But I mean, my father, I'm very close to my folks. They're still around. They live here in Austin. My dad's 90. My mom's 83. And by the way, we're trying to, it's difficult to sort of be away from them during this COVID-19 time. But we're helping them out, obviously, as I know you are with your mother as well. But, my father was not, I would not classify him as an outdoorsman. He respected and understood, and we always had a lot of books around the house that dealt with wildlife. And I can remember, the snakes of Texas and all these, books that I was fascinated to go through the library and look at those books and read those books. But he always, and my mother too, supported me in my love of the outdoors from a very young age. I mean, that's really what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be, getting dirty in the Buffalo Bayou, Brays Bayou, chasing carp or chasing catfish or whatever it is we could find. But there was a family that moved in a couple of houses down, and to this day, I'm best friends with Carlos Vaquero and still very close to his father. His father took me on my first hunting trip when I was 8 years old. And really the rest is history. I mean, back then we were driving from Houston in their van through Tamaulipas to Tampico, all through Mexico and La Pesca, camping on the beach. I mean, it was an incredible time. And so, that's really what instilled the love of the outdoors and that connection. He helped me find that connection that I was talking about a few minutes ago. And then, of course, my parents and my other family, understood that and supported me in those decisions. But I went to high school in Houston. I worked at some people. I'm gonna, that are at least as old as we are will remember Oshman Sporting Goods.
Oh yeah.
I was the fisheries the fishing department manager for years at the Oshman Sporting Goods on Post Oak.
I remember that one.
Yeah. So there was a gentleman came in one day and was checking out. He'd been in a few times, and he I saw that he had a badge in his wallet, and he was a commissioner for Texas Parks and Wildlife, George Bolin. And he said, have you ever thought about being a game warden? And of course, I had already thought about it, but he sort of helped me through the process and helped me maneuver. In fact, I talked to him 2 days ago. He's still in.
I took George fishing a couple years ago.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
In his 80s.
Yes, he's in his 80s. Yeah. And so he helped me a lot. That's
an amazing individual.
Amazing individual, has done so much for conservation, and specifically conservation along the coast. But I went to high school, went to Stephen F. Austin University up in East Texas, mainly because I like the fishing around that area. And of course, again, another decision based on what I love to do. And then graduated from SFA and was, went back to work for Oshman's for a short period of time, and then went to the Game Warden Academy in 1993. And you're right, I did go to the FBI Academy. That was a little bit later. That was in 2007 while I was with Texas Parks and Wildlife.
Oh, okay. I thought that preceded your career with Texas Parks and Wildlife. What was the intention of that academy? Just further education for law?
Yeah, further education as far as sort of senior management, law enforcement, and networking, with so many different agencies and other, law enforcement agencies from other countries attend the National Academy as well. So that was a great opportunity. I'm still close with many of those folks. And, like you, when I was growing up in Houston, I didn't want to see the light bulbs in the back window either, and I wasn't by any means perfect and had a few little run-ins too, but it's nice to have friends in other states in law enforcement when you need something or they need a favor or a contact. Really helps out a lot, and the relationships. And it goes back to everything. It goes back to what you talked about right off the bat, our relationship. I mean, that's what's so important. That's how we get things done. That's how, you've helped me through decisions. I've helped you through decisions. It's all about relationships. And I always say that in law enforcement is a team sport. And I mean that somewhat jokingly. It's, it's obviously a very serious career, but we can't accomplish anything by ourselves within Parks and Wildlife. We have to rely on other agencies. As I mentioned before, we have to rely on people like you that have the heart and the drive to support us and to care and to do what's right.
And just for the record, so you can back me up here, I've never had to call you to bail me out of any kind of serious trouble. So,
well, there was that one time. You and Alvin got to, yeah, no, I'm kidding.
I've got that card, and I hope I never have to play it. You said something interesting, that it wasn't necessarily your father, but a friend's father. It doesn't have to be your kid. It doesn't have to be you, but to put that spark in a young person, to get them to respect animals, to respect nature, to the seriousness of hunting, and just how fortunate we are to have the opportunity to hunt. I think it gets misconstrued quite often, like, hunting these days has this general perception of like someone maybe going to it, not in the South and where we are, but maybe in larger urban areas, where a hunter is like someone who goes and kills a caged lion or something. Like, hunting is a deep respect for the environment, for nature, for wild animals. And for me, the kill is not really all that joyful, honestly. It's a serious moment in the process of providing food and sustenance for your family in what I think is a responsible and sustainable way. Like, I would rather kill an axis deer that's invasive in Texas and just happens to be a delicious animal, and go through the difficult process of hunting that animal, killing that animal, and then properly and respectfully, butchering that animal, and then providing that meat for my friends and family. It has just significant meaning. And I think about having that opportunity, whereas maybe somebody in Europe where hunting is very difficult. It's difficult to obtain permits. It's usually reserved for the wealthy. And gosh, I can't think of a greater luxury and privilege than what we have in terms of being able to buy a state license and then access either public land or private land, and then be able to hunt and teach our kids to hunt. But if you don't have kids and you love to hunt, hit up one of your friends so that maybe you could take their child out at a young but mature age and teach them the value and respect for animals. Because I think there's no greater example than hunting for me, to where that fine razor line between perversion and beauty exists. Like, if you're going out just because you want to kill a bunch of stuff, whether it's spotlighting rabbits or just blasting hogs and letting that animal lay there, maybe suffer, versus someone who has really practiced their shot and feels obligated to that animal to not allow it to suffer, and it's all in your intention and how you approach that activity. And for me, it's just so important that it's done the right way, or it's one of the ugliest things that we can do.
Exactly. And I think you might have seen my daughter in the background walk through there a second ago. I took her a few years back out to Junction. We've talked about that piece of property out there that some friends have that we have access to. And she shot her first deer, but she, we had taken her for multiple years prior, and we never quite got there. And I think that brings so much to the experience. She learned something every time. We learned, we were together. It's that time you spend together. It's that respect that you build. Why do you choose to take that animal versus another animal? And, you're right. I think it's a gift for us to be able to do that. And now fast forward in the current situation that we are with the virus, we're lucky and blessed to have a lot of deer meat out in the freezer. And, I've shared that with our friends and neighbors as well. And that's a definition of being sustainable. But yeah, I shot my first deer in 1983, okay, off of 1431 between Lago Vista and Marble Falls. Now, I didn't shoot it on the highway. I shot it on a property adjacent to the highway.
Sure.
But yeah, but I mean, the population, think about this, JT, the population in Texas was 16 million. Okay. So it's, it's doubled. We're at 30 million. It's basically doubled since then. And so, what challenges does that bring to us, and what responsibilities do we have to deal with that? I think that's, what you're talking about as far as being ethical and responsible hunter, being ethical and responsible angler. It's more important now than ever because we have a lot more demand on our natural resources. And that's something that I think we really need to focus more attention on. And I practice catch and release 95% of the time. And as you know, I love to fly fish. You've worked with me a lot on that. But if you decide to take a redfish or two for dinner, do it, take it. And I support that. And I think sometimes we can go a little too far. I think as long as we have that conservation minded attitude and we understand the big picture, but I think there also is beauty in taking that one redfish to take home to have for dinner.
100%.
You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, 100%. I think Texas especially, we've got other industries. We've got so much oil, and so the coast takes a back seat to that industry. Whereas, like, take Florida for example, their main industry is tourism. Aside from some of the agricultural water issues that they're having,
Mm-hmm.
there's just a real priority on making sure it's a beautiful place to come visit. But I don't know, Texas, my view and my frustrations are basically that a lot of people come down to the Texas coast to be guided or to fish on their own. And the whole experience is based on whether or not they can keep their legal limit. And I just think, personally, I think that there's a lot more to absorb in the experience than just basing it on whether you're successful on catching a full limit of fish. And I work on showing people a deeper appreciation for our Texas coast, all the bird life, all of our beautiful marsh, and just the health and the biomass of the fertility of our ecosystem down there. And everyone's in it for their own reasons, and I respect other perspectives on it. I would just I would like to share what's captured. I'm the same as you. Like, nobody really in my family fished, at least not beyond, a drugstore, closed face reel and a red and white bobber with like a night crawler on it.
Right.
We didn't really know what we were doing, and it was sort of a personal epiphany in my life, meeting all the people at the Austin Angler back in the early 90s, and then fly fishing. It just opened up it created that spark that you got as a young boy, and there was no turning me back. And so I just think, without that experience, without lucking into that situation, I might not have ever came across that. That I might have never had that opportunity to feel that way about it. And so
I mean, we talk about the sunrises and the sunsets and really everything that's in between. I mean, when you set the hook or you pull the trigger, that's a split second. And think about all the time that you're outside and that you put the trip, the drive, the evenings, the campfires, the meals, everything. And then there's 1 second you set the hook, and maybe you don't even do that. Because, I mean, we've all been on fishing trips where you don't set the hook, or we've been on hunting trips where you don't pull the trigger. And I think that's okay. That's more than okay. That, again, goes back to the overall experience. And, you mentioned that if you don't have kids, or if some other kids that want, there's a lot of programs out there. I mean, there's Texas Wildlife Association youth hunting program that people can get involved with. There's angler education programs that people can get involved with through the Parks and Wildlife Department. So there's a lot of opportunity, but people ask me a lot of times, what's the most important takeaway? What is if you could say, one thing, what would it be? And I would say, take young people, take kids outside. And, it could be a hike. I mean, you could take them, I'm here in central Austin, you could take a kid down to the Mueller Lake and to Mueller Pond and take a couple of bass rigs out there and go catch some bass. There's so much opportunity. You just have to know where that opportunity is. And I think that goes along with that connection that I'm talking about. There has to be opportunity in Texas. Obviously, is a private land state, 95, 98% private, depending on what numbers you look at, private lands. But our coastline and our lakes and our rivers really is our public land.
Yeah.
And we have to do everything that we can. Let me tell you, you and I are exactly on the same page on the protection of the Texas coast. We could not be more closely aligned. And we also understand that there's a lot of opportunity in Texas, and oil and gas has created some of the funding to allow us to do certain things. But there's also a line, right? And we have to be careful where that balance is, because the decisions that we make today, right now, are going to impact future generations, are going to impact our kids and our kids' kids. That's what we have to think about, because, I was watching Patagonia's 180 degrees south last night, and I've seen it a couple of times, and, we're all hunkered down watching TV, and, what Shenard said about sometimes you have to make a 180-degree turn and then take a step forward. That's different than taking a step backwards. Sometimes you have to change kind of our approach and what we're doing. And so if something's not working, or if something is going to impact the environment so strongly, maybe you do a 180 and you take a step forward. And I think that can't be off the table.
Yeah. I in my heart, you referencing that, I know exactly the 180 turn that I would like to see taken. One thing I took for granted before I met you, we became close friends, and I became involved with Parks and Wildlife, is, you just think about law enforcement as this integral part of the government, that it's like, a powerful entity. And I was shocked to find out what little funding Texas Parks and Wildlife gets through the overall state budget. So you guys do what you do on less than 1% of the state budget. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation, which is a 501c3, is a completely separate entity from Texas Parks and Wildlife, but they exist solely to help supplement and fund Texas Parks and Wildlife, to make you guys stronger and give you the tools that you need to do what you do.
They do, and sort of, another aspect of the Parks and Wildlife Foundation is the Gear Up for Game Warden program. That's a subsidiary of the foundation, and they specifically help law enforcement. They help us get a lot of the tools that we need to do our job. And again, we have some good friends in the legislature. We have some friends that have supported us, but again, there's a lot of competition, and there's going to be more competition moving forward. We're about to enter a very challenging time due to the virus as it relates to state budgetary processes, like we've never seen, we've never seen before. Yeah, like we've never seen before. So the challenges are going to be even greater, and the opportunity for the private sector and the citizenry of Texas to support us and to support the foundation, I think, is hard to measure. We really don't know what's going to happen in the next session, but it's going to be very, very challenging. And I'm not taking away anything from the healthcare needs. Obviously, that's hugely important, and there's lots of people that are suffering. And there's, people have lost friends and family, so I don't mean to minimize that at all. That's hugely important. But again, it's going to be a very challenging time as it relates to state budget. But the foundation, and of course you've been a part of that as an ambassador, have helped raise, literally millions of dollars for law enforcement, hundreds of millions of dollars for the department. And you can do a lot with that kind of money. You can do a lot with that. So thank you for your help specifically, but thank you to lots of people. So we did one of the very difficult jobs that Texas Game Wardens do is recovery of drowning victims. And that's something that we take very seriously. We do many, many recoveries a year. We have a specialized dive team that does a lot of those recoveries. Our game wardens utilize side scan sonar, which the foundation and Gear Up for Game Wardens helps to purchase. But a couple of years ago, we recovered a victim that was deceased who had drowned. And the mother of that victim donated, I think it was $50 to Gear Up for Game Warden. But you could just sort of tell that $50 was a huge amount of money. You know, the last thing we wanted was for her to give us anything. You know, we're here to provide a service and with compassion, and that's what we're going to do. But she felt that it was almost her duty to make a donation to us in her son's name. And I'll never forget that, because we've received $10,000 donations, $25,000, $50,000, but that $50 donation to us, that got us. That was the real deal.
Oh man, that's heavy duty. And that equipment, that I got to see firsthand. I rode on the boat as part of the Citizens Academy. And it's like the previous equipment that you guys had was like, maybe that's a body down there, we don't know. And it would take hours and hours of your time and resources to vaguely determine if you were in a hot spot or not. And with that new side scanning sonar stuff, like you get close to it. Like I was looking on the bottom and we had submerged a dummy in like 50 foot of water, and the wardens were driving around with the equipment, winched over the side. And it was like you could see the eye sockets and the shape of the nose with that sonar. And
Yes.
that wasn't provided by the tax dollar. That wasn't provided by the people of Texas and their tax money. That was supplemented through private donations through the foundation, right?
That's exactly right. And I think to that point, you know, there's always, obviously, in a disaster response, we talked about Harvey for a few minutes, but there's sort of a little bit of a conflict, and that's probably too strong of a word to talk about, public safety. And because we're state peace officers, Texas Game Wardens are state peace officers, and there's a lot that goes along with that. We all know that what our mission is, our primary mission is, the protection of natural resources and water safety and what we do day to day. But there's a lot of other, things that come along with that. We may wake up in the morning and just go out on Lake Travis and for a normal patrol, and before it's said and done, you're arresting someone for operating a watercraft under the influence of methamphetamine or something. There's cocaine. There's no telling. There could be an assault. There could be. It's just like any other type of law enforcement. But natural resources is our primary mission, and that's something that we're extremely proud of. I think that. But again, clean water, clean air. If that's not public safety, I don't know what is. And I think that's, again, we got to keep pushing that mindset. I mean, that again, why does what we do as game wardens, what you do as an ambassador for the outdoors, matter to someone in downtown San Antonio, downtown Houston, downtown Dallas that doesn't hunt or fish? Well, I guarantee you they care about clean water, and they care about clean air, and they care about wild spaces. And so again, it's drawing that connection. And that's something that I think sometimes it's our responsibility, it's your responsibility to do everything we can to allow people to find that connection and to be educated in why it matters to them, and find that switch and turn that switch on.
100%. Man, you don't have to comment on this, but I feel irresponsible not mentioning it. A big part of the discussions in the Saltwater Advisory Committee meetings of the last several sessions have pertained to some industrialization on the Middle Texas coast where I live and guide. And a big part of that is healthy for the state, which is the Permian Basin has a tremendous amount of oil. That oil creates a lot of wealth in the state of Texas. It's being piped down to the Middle Texas coast because the Galveston ports are just maxed out. And in bringing that oil to the Middle Texas coast, there's some strong voices that are suggesting that the pipeline should continue offshore to a safe offshore loading terminal, which is done a majority of the time in different parts all around the world. To get oil from an inland estuary out to the open Gulf would be a safer maneuver than to try to bring VLCCs, which are very large crude carriers, giant super tankers, essentially into our shallow water estuary and all the way to the port of Corpus Christi. Well, if those ships don't come in, if they load up offshore, then the port of Corpus Christi, which is a government elected board of citizens, who owns land, which is the port of Corpus Christi. The port of Corpus Christi can't commission the contents of those vessels unless they tie up to port of Corpus Christi property. And so the move that's supported, from what I understand, by Governor Abbott, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, which I think is an absolute disgrace, the Corps of Engineers, and somebody else I'm leaving out. But anyway, there's nobody in Texas that I've talked to. The vast majority of Texans have no idea about these projects. Essentially, the powers that be have made it very difficult to obtain information about these projects. One of the projects is to build a giant tank farm and a VLCC port on Harbor Island, which is adjacent to Port Aransas, right where the ferry crosses to Port Aransas. The city of Port Aransas is just in an outcry because it basically creates a huge health hazard to their citizens and also a giant deterrent to tourism, which is what they depend on for their economy. Somehow, the power and the money involved with bringing these ships into our bay versus bringing the oil offshore to a loading terminal is strong enough to override, the health of our environment down there. And this is not that I'm pretty much apolitical. I have a lot of conservative values, but I also have some liberal values. I'm somewhere down the middle. I try to be rational about it, not political about it. But one thing, like you mentioned, and it's a selfish reason, I make my living on the health of the Middle Texas coast, and I exploit redfish and I exploit the Middle Texas coast to make a living. My form of exploitation is to pole around in a small skiff, show people the different aspects of our environment down there, and catch and release redfish, and on occasion keep a couple redfish for dinner. The exploitation involved with the Port of Corpus Christi is to basically dredge an 80-foot channel through the middle of our bay in order to bring in ships that have never made it into a shallow water estuary anywhere around the world. The dredging to 80 feet would make the smallest estuary in America the deepest port in America simultaneously, which has never been done anywhere around the world. They're alleviating the need for environmental impact studies. And I just feel like Texans, of which I am one, seventh generation, are so blinded by the rhetoric of freedom and liberty and no government that they're blinded to the fact that our politics, our governor serves corporations. He doesn't, in my mind, have a heart for the people of the state. He's talking about jobs. Well, local jobs might include 1 or 2 security guards to look over these massive operations. They're very much high technical, like computer driven, low manpower type operations. I'm going on, but you know how passionate I am about this particular subject. And I just urge people to look into these projects and make up their own mind about what they think is healthy for the state. Do we want to destroy whooping crane habitat after saving the whooping cranes has been one of the greatest triumphs of the history of conservation in this country? Do we want to ruin Bird Island Basin, National Seashore, one of the last undeveloped 40-mile stretches of beach in this country? Do we want to bring these ships in for what is a 30-year supply of oil coming from the Permian Basin? When it's all said and done, those corporations take their money and leave, and we're left with a toxic waste dump. And I think that people that are involved equate Texas Parks and Wildlife into that equation, along with Governor Abbott, TECQ, Corps of Engineers, and the Port of Corpus Christi. I know for a fact from sitting in those meetings, the Texas Parks and Wildlife biologists and wardens have voiced major concern over these projects and what the effects will be to our ecosystem down there. So I want people to know that Texas Parks and Wildlife is not some submissive government entity that's on board with these projects. They have voiced major concern, and their voice is not necessarily a determining factor in the decisions that are going to be eventually made by the governor and these other agencies.
Well, I mean, okay, that's why I love you. That's why I love you, man. That's why I love you, because of your passion.
Oh.
And, you know, I mean, John Murr didn't sit back either, right? When everything was happening and the dams were being built in California. And so he was very outspoken. And I think we have to have that. There has to be dialogue, on both sides of this. Just real simply, my outlook is again, I've already referenced how important oil and gas is to the state of Texas. I think there are ways to do it that don't necessarily change the coastline. And again, that sort of goes back to what I was saying about the 180-degree step forward. I just think we need to be smart, because when we lose an acre to development on the coast, it's gone. We're not going to get it back. But I think more so than that, we have to be smart about, mitigating threats to the coast. We have enough, because again, hurricanes and tropical storms are natural. They serve a purpose. They still serve a purpose. Unfortunately now, I'm talking about before people were there, right? Well, now we have people and business and commerce and all, and so when a hurricane or a tropical, it's devastating now. It used to serve a purpose of opening passes and bringing fresh water and changing flows, and that's all gone away because we've changed the landscape. So I guess my question is what happens when we have, not if, but when we have a major natural disaster after some of this infrastructure is in place. That's a concern of mine. But also it's just the continued development along the coastline, really along the entire coastline. It's changing so quickly, and that goes again back to what we were saying, just the changes in our lifetime. We're in a time to where we really have to think is, what is the long term, what is the short term return on the investment? A generation or two from now, after the population in Texas isn't at 30, but it's at 60 million, where are people going to go? What are we going to have? What are our kids going to have? And as far as it relates to the natural resources. And so we have to be really, really smart on our choices. I think that, again, it's the more land we can conserve, in my opinion, it's money in the bank. It's money in the bank down the road.
Yeah, my boys are young. If I can't share with them what I've spent my whole life appreciating here in Texas, that's a devastating concept to me. That who I am and where I'm from and what I've dedicated my life to won't be even something that I can, physically show them in another 10 years when they're 10 years.
And you're talking about that connection, because again, what if we have a completely developed coastline? What's the point then? We talked about trying to find the connection in someone that's in downtown San Antonio, Austin, Dallas. Well, now there's still that connection. It exists, but fast forward 60 years from now, where's that connection going to be? What are we going to have to demonstrate? So I think we've, again, and I'm pretty apolitical, obviously too, but we do have to make hard choices and hard decisions. I just think that at some point the environment has to win.
I can't believe that that's become a political term, that environment could represent to some people some leftist tree hugging perspective. Environment is the surrounding in which we can survive. And clean water and clean air has to be paramount to our decision making on a political level. Like what really bothers me is that the good, hardworking people of this state, who have very little free time, to focus on the depth of these issues, are led to believe that it's for national strength and security. Well, that oil, I've talked to a lot of energy experts, and if you really want strength and security for the United States, then that oil should remain in the ground till it's the last oil left on the planet. That gives us all the cards in our deck. But what happens, and I understand it, hey, if some property that I inherited from my parents had 1,000,000 barrels of oil in it, I'd probably be wanting to pump it out too, even at low prices, to get $1,000,000 in my account. I totally get that, and I'm not immune from that sort of desire. But all the oil coming from the Permian Basin, it belongs to the landowner. It's bought by the oil companies, and it's pre-sold to China and South America. As fast as they can tank it out from those pipelines into super tankers, it's gone, and America will never see that oil again. That's the truth about this project. It's not going to secure our national interests. It's going to make a few people a lot wealthier than they already are, and that's it, period. So do we want to exchange the health of our Middle Texas coast and that amazing resource, one of the most beautiful, I think it deserves the same protection as Yellowstone and Glacier and Redwoods National Forest. I think that the Texas coast, and what I've been able to share with people around the world, and it is an exquisitely beautiful and fertile place. And the idea that we would just completely destroy it for 30-year supply of oil with a 5-year profitability window after all the infrastructure is built is just beyond sinister.
Well, I think that the other thing too is that we have to be willing to do the homework like you've done and connect the dots, whether we're talking about the Texas coast or whether we're talking about Pebble Mine. A lot of times, unfortunately, and not in every case, but a lot of times in these situations, the companies that profit are not even American companies.
Exactly.
And that's, I think, again, is some of the tragedy in all of this.
I do too. Moving on. Hey, thanks for sharing in that with me for a second. That this particular project down there keeps me up at night. But I think
I know it does. And again, thank God for your passion and obviously you care enough to I know you've attended many of those scoping meetings and just again, thank you for.
They make it painful, man. It's really tough to go to those public meetings. They take hours and hours. Anyway, I want to talk about what your game wardens do on a daily basis. We've talked about the drowning recoveries, and you mentioned earlier that you've got some wardens off the coast right now retrieving long lines from illegal fishery practices. But even their patrolling of our commercial fishery, like the commercial fishery, it's a big problem that licensed commercial fishermen aren't necessarily recording their catches. And like the oyster boats, I know that your wardens are all over those oyster boats, and they're often running seine nets and long lines and keeping flounder and other thing they're not permitted to catch. And just talk to us about what the role of a game warden is, and what dangers and what crazy stories you have as a 27, 28-year veteran of the force, and just fill with the life of a career game warden and what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I started over in East Texas in Tyler County, bordered Hardin County and Angelina County and Jasper County and Polk County, and I mean that's really East Texas, and that's sort of where I cut my teeth, and was lucky enough to work with some game wardens that had worked during the 70s and the late 60s when I came on in 93, 94. So just having that opportunity was absolutely amazing to be able to learn and hear you talk about some stories. And in fact, I don't think I can repeat many of them on this podcast.
But we can do it.
But seriously, we've lost 19 Texas game wardens in the line of duty, number one. So we can't ever forget that. Game wardens that gave their life to protecting our natural resources. And we talk about passion and we talk about heart. but they gave their life, and we're still in contact with their families to this day on the anniversaries of their deaths. So that's something that is always top of mind for us. And then the game wardens that have, again, I mentioned the game wardens in East Texas that fought the netting wars down on the coast in the 70s and 80s, that worked the border region in the 50s and 40s. I mean, we've been around, Texas Game Wardens have been around for 125 years, one of the oldest law enforcement agencies in the state, very storied. But I think the most important thing to me is the compassion that these men and women have. And I have seen it firsthand. I say we, I mean that in the context of game wardens, but I should say they, because they do such an incredible job while I sit around in an office. But game wardens were asked to take a more active role in border security a few years back, just based upon the numbers of folks that were coming across the border. There were some days that just in a very small 9-mile stretch, our game wardens were coming in contact with 700, 800 immigrants coming across. And so it was really a public safety issue. A lot of them were coming across the river in homemade rafts and no life jackets, and it was a big deal, just because of the sort of the situation that those kids coming across could be put in.
Yeah.
So we were dealing with that, and of course there was a criminal element too that was coming across, and that's something that's very dangerous as well. But a lot of smuggling was going on, it still is. But there was a couple of situations where a young man from Honduras had went under. Our game warden saw him go under, got to his location within just a few seconds, was able to locate him, pull him up, and actually gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and saved his life. And that's the kind of work that these game wardens do. And I mentioned the hurricane and natural disaster response, tornadoes, floods, but what they do every day is just how they interact with the people of the state of Texas. You mentioned commercial fishing. Commercial fishing is huge. It's multi-billion-dollar industry to the state. And you talk again about development along the coast and what could change that and what could impact that. I mean, our commercial fishery is very, very healthy. Our shrimp fishery is healthy. Our oyster fishing is healthy. We don't want to do anything that could jeopardize and change that through development, obviously. But I won't get back on that for right now. The majority of commercial fishermen do things the right way, first and foremost. In fact, I'm friends with some of them. They're good people, and I want the audience to understand that. There is, however, an element in anything, any group, in any industry, that they're going to try to take a shortcut. They're going to do what they can to increase their profits. And so in oystering, of course, oystering too, back to public safety. I mean, if someone eats an oyster from a polluted water, not only could they get sick, they could die. It's very, very dangerous. So, our game wardens ensure that oysters are harvested from clean water, not polluted water, not areas that are closed by the health department. Again, back to the Gulf shrimping and bay shrimping. Game wardens play a vital role in that, as do fisheries biologists. I want to be, we work with other divisions every day within Parks and Wildlife and other agencies. So our biologists, our fisheries and wildlife techs, hats off to them as well. They do a fantastic job. But, day to day, let's think about this. Here we are, in both of us are in Austin. So what's going on? Well, you've got the Colorado River below Austin that's getting a lot of attention now. You've got all the lakes. You've got the lake region. You have game wardens going out to they could even got, they even got to Lady Bird every once in a while. But primarily in this area, you've got Travis, you've got Buchanan, and, again, just ensuring that folks are abiding by the laws and regulations of the state, that they're not putting other people in danger by boating while intoxicated. We've had horrific boat accidents on Travis and on Buchanan in recent years. So, we want you to go out and have a good time and abide by the rules. But when that starts infringing on other people's safety or taking advantage of the natural resources, our folks are going to get involved, and we expect them to get involved. And so that's something that they take very seriously. On Travis, last summer, we had some game wardens were patrolling. They were actually run over by another vessel. The operator was severely intoxicated.
He had had like 3 DWIs on the road and been cited for being drunk behind the wheel of a boat before. And he ran the game warden's boat.
That was a bad deal. But
they were able to reverse out of the way, right? And
just quickly enough. If not, it would have gone right over the center console.
Yeah. Jeez.
But you mentioned some stories, and I'll tell you one that's kind of interesting, real quick. And this is when I was over in East Texas. So there was a family. In fact, National Geographic did a story. My parents have every National Geographic, I think, since the beginning of time. But I think it was in 1972 or 1974. There was an article, and it was called "The Throw of the Neches," and it was on a stretch of the Neches River that was on that sort of Tyler County, Hardin County line, Jasper, in Tyler County, the area that I worked, but before the time I was there. And it was there was a little island that was in the river, and it was called Eason Island. Well, the Eason family, and I'm friends with some of these folks, so I don't want you to think by any means that they're guilty through association, but they've been down there a long time, okay, a long time, and they're very, very in tune with the natural environment. And so when I hit Tyler County, of course, I met a few of them, and the first one I met, I pulled into a boat ramp and off the Neches River, and there was just one truck, and he was pulling his boat out of the river, and I was brand new. I mean, I hadn't been there for 3 or 4 months. I was by myself. He was the only other person down there. He wasn't wearing any shoes, and he was probably, I don't know, 45 or 50 years old at the time. And he said, "Are you the new game warden here?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am. I'm Grahame Jones. Nice to meet you." And he shook my hand, and he was personable, but he was still kind of eyeing me a little bit, sizing me up. And so we exchanged pleasantries and talked a little bit about fishing. And he said, "Well, if you ever want to learn this river, just, come in and hop in with me," and et cetera, et cetera. And so we said our goodbyes, and I was walking away, and he said, "Oh, hey, one more thing." I said, "What's that?" He said, "The only season I believe in is salt and pepper." But so we chased a few of those family members off and on for the next few years. And my partner and I, Mike Wheat, went out one night, and we were going to work all night long. So we put our John boat in off a slough, and we were working some backcountry sloughs. And it was in the spring. I think it was my first spring and year anniversary that I was there. And it was cloudy that night. And I probably shouldn't tell this story, because game wardens are not supposed to get lost, but we got lost. I'm talking about slough, pine trees, no stars, no moon, no cell phones, nothing. And we got back in there, and I mean, it was just it was a spider web of different sloughs and bayous, and lo and behold, an Eason is the one that found us and got us back safely. And so, we finally, the next morning, I mean, it's 8 o'clock, by the way, by the time we find our vehicle and get back. And it's like two opposing teams meet, at the 50-yard line for the coin toss, and then everyone goes their own way, right? So we just kind of, things went back to normal. But that was like a timeout. Hey, game warden's lost. Let's help him out and find him, and then so he can catch us again, right? So that's kind of the mentality of it. But it was, and great people in East Texas, and I talk to some of those guys to this day.
That's awesome, man. So look, you're retiring at 50 years old, and you already said like your genetics make it into their 90s, even as men. So,
Well, retiring is sort of, again, I am starting this new gig.
What are your plans for your family and for yourself?
Well, again, I'm very excited about working for the 100 Club. As far as plans for myself and my family, I mean, I really want to continue to be involved in issues that relate to conservation in Texas and beyond, to issues that relate to the environment, and issues that relate and affect first responders, primarily law enforcement and firefighters and EMS. Something, again, as I mentioned, is extremely important to me. So I'll be very active in all of that. I think that something that, again, we've been trying to find the silver lining, right, during this COVID, and it's really impossible to find. I figured out that with all the suffering and the death, I think a silver lining is really the wrong thing to say, because that would be very selfish. But I think it is a time for us, and even moving forward from here, and you wrote about it in a post on Instagram I read, that maybe a time to become a little bit more introspective, a time to read and learn and get to know. I mean, I've spent more time with my daughter. We went on a 3-mile walk last night around Hyde Park. And, you know, it's a time to maybe get rid of some of the junk in our lives and the fluff. And not just now, but maybe this sets the tone for that. I think that something, and we've talked about this before, JT, is to focus on quality rather than amounts. You know, save up and work hard and buy that maybe that fly rod that is going to last a little longer, or I'd rather have 4 or 5 good shirts that I really like to wear rather than all just a full closet of stuff that I never use. So working towards maybe a little bit more of an approach of being a minimalist to some degree, I think is, and we've downsized, our family's downsized recently, and you can tell this is our back here. This is our living room, kitchen, study, library, but it's great.
Less to clean, less to deal with, happier.
That's it. And so
let's go to Lukenbach, Texas. Really?
Here, let me grab this guitar.
I was going to say, I'm sorry for scheduling this thing in the morning. Me and you'd probably be having a mezcal cocktail and playing some tunes together. If things.
That's right. In fact, you stole that line. I was going to use that line, that mezcal line, but you got to it first. But yeah, I mean, that's I think what we're, and maybe this is what it took to sort of be the genesis to get some of that mindset going that way. But yeah, I don't see a lot of junk behind your picture there either. I noticed we both have some type of
horns on the wall. Yeah.
So that one behind me is it's an ox, and it was one of the last working oxen from the prison system.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And someone gave it to me. I don't know where it came from, but it's got a little plaque on there, and that's what it says. So.
That's one of 2 giant bass family longhorns that I found in the marsh of San Jose Island.
Very nice.
Over the last 25 years. It's about, you can't really tell from this perspective, but it's about 8.5 feet wide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's incredible. But yeah, I mean, I think that we all want the same thing, really. And that's to sort of find that inner peace and what not just what makes us happy, but what can we do? What can we give back? So really moving forward, I want to try to give back, and you've been doing a fantastic job of giving back. You know, you think about sort of heroes in conservation and folks that have, you know, impacted you and made I think, but not just a personal impact, people that have made a difference. And you start thinking about those people, not just in Texas, but across the country. And whether it's, you know, Rachel Carson or Dobie or Tom McGuane or, you know, any of these folks, but you're in that category, man. You have to understand the impact and what you're doing and that passion and what that brings to other people. That gift that you're giving to other people is incredible.
Gosh, I sure appreciate that. Sometimes it feels all for nothing, but somehow I wake up positive about the whole thing and just keep trying to do my part and to get better at doing my part. I'm far from perfect, and I've enjoyed the process of learning not to run water when I brush my teeth, not to, I don't water my yard. If the grass dies, let it die. I need different kind of grass that can survive in an arid environment, you know.
Yep.
Every bit of snow that falls in the mountains makes its way to the sea if we let it, and the health of our estuary depends on rivers flowing, you know. So I think the same as you, there's really no silver lining to the predicament that man's put itself in, but everything does happen for a reason, and we can certainly learn from it and make ourselves better stewards of the environment. And I don't think there's any other way to live your life that's meaningful.
That's it. And back to what our game wardens are, 559 game wardens do every day, and the support staff that works for this, the non-commissioned support staff, the admin folks that work in our offices and support our game wardens, and the fisheries biologists and wildlife biologists, and the folks behind the scenes that you never hear of, but are keeping our communications up and running, when we need that. And all those folks that are still working, they're all working right now. They're all, they're all working, and they're still trying to do the best job that they can. And in law enforcement and the opportunities that I've had, I've been able to see and interact with so many different agencies, all the agencies across the state, and as we mentioned before, so many others. But I would put Texas Game Wardens, and I'm not saying me, I'm saying them, Texas Game Wardens, up against anyone, anytime, as it relates to being self-sustaining, being professional, being compassionate, having compassion, and being empathetic. They get it, and they work hard, and they want to do it for the right reasons. And I wrote a paper when I was in 7th or 8th grade about wanting to be a Texas Game Warden. My mom still has it, I think. She'll get it out every once in a while. But there's
a lot of them, Graham, and they're all proud to have you too, sir.
But the thing is that there's so many game wardens that I'm not the only one that wanted to be a game warden in 7th or 8th grade, And so it's something that is so inherent to what game wardens are. And again, nothing's perfect and no one's perfect, and that's not my point, but they work hard and they're making a difference, and it's going to matter down the road to your kids and my kids, and then their kids. And so that's really why we do it, is conservation for future generations, plain and simple. I mean, that's why you do what you do. That's why we do what we do, and we do it together. And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of it.
100%, Graham. Hey, buddy. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me this morning.
Thank you.
And I sure appreciate Texas Parks and Wildlife and all the men and women that serve that agency.
Well, JT, thank you. Thanks for having me. Can't say enough about what you do. I'm proud to have worked with you, and proud that you're a part of Parks and Wildlife, but more so, I'm proud to call you a friend, amigo.
Me too, buddy. All right. Well, you guys take care, and we'll resurface soon. Go fishing or hunting.
See you, brother.
See you later.
Bye.